talked a week ago. No, Monday.
No, Monday.
5 days ago. We had our consultation. You found me on YouTube, right?
Yep.
And we had our consult. Your past history is really more of a thin identity, more anorexic, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, so how's practice been? How is the how'd it go?
It's been amazing, really, to be honest with you.
Okay, amazing. Can you explain what you mean by amazing? Because before you go into the amazingness of this, are you surprised?
Yeah.
Okay. You watched my videos, right?
Yeah, I am. But I think I remember somebody saying to me once before, if you ever want to get rid of this, your eating disorders, and you ever want to move on, and you ever, you have to get rid of the fear of not eating and accept who you are now. And I remember thinking, if I accept who I am now, that means in 2 years' time I'll be double the size.
Oh yeah. That's what it feels like. That's what it felt like to me. I felt like if I stop what I'm doing, it's a guarantee I'm going to be 400, 500. I feel it growing. Like I cannot, it's crazy, right? Because it's illusional. It's all made up in the mind. But it feels real. And it feels like you're going to die. That's the other thing too. But before we start, all you've been doing, right? I said the challenge is for you to eliminate your weight and identity with a body from the equation. So it's not a pressure. Nothing's going to change. Don't expect it to change. Don't hope for change, right? Don't even focus on that. And then take your efforts and just eat when you're hungry. Eat adequately. You're not going to starve, but don't get full. But give yourself complete access to all food. No shame, no guilt. Okay, that's really pretty much the simplicity of what you did.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me the result.
So basically, I obviously had a couple of days where I hadn't been eating much because I hadn't been feeling well. So then obviously when you've not eaten for a couple of days, you have a day when you're then really hungry. So I was like, right, okay, here we go. I'm hungry. I knew I was hungry. I definitely, because I was concerned I wouldn't know when I was hungry. But I knew it was hunger. So I was like, okay, what do you want to eat? And I'd think of something and it would be like, some rubbish food that I'd normally want to sort of binge on. And I'd think, okay, you're allowed to eat anything. Do you really want that? And I think, no, I don't really want that. Anyway, so I thought, well, I'll just go to the supermarket. So I went to the supermarket and I walked around the supermarket. It was like, just choose whatever you want. You can eat anything. You're not on a diet. It's not a problem. And I ended up leaving the supermarket with handfuls of fresh vegetables and fruit and nuts and seeds and yogurt, and literally ate probably the healthiest meal that I think I've ever eaten, in complete freedom mode, and was like, okay, fine. Obviously, it massively filled me up, and I didn't eat again for the rest of the day because I'd ate quite a substantial meal.
Well, were you full? Were you full then? So, I mean, did you overeat? Did you overeat that meal?
Yeah. I was kind of, I'm not over full. I stopped before I was over full, but then the rest of the day I just didn't feel hungry.
Okay, so it was substantial enough. But if you were hungry again that day, you would have eaten something else, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then every time I got to the point where, because again, I was saying this whole thing about me not knowing whether I'm hungry or not. So I'd start to think, am I hungry? And I'd be like, okay, well, you can eat anything you want if you're hungry. And then I'd sit there and I think, well, I'm not actually hungry. So I'd forget about it and I'd move on. And so it wasn't hunger, it was a thought of food. And that happened a few times. And then I've probably, today I'm eating things that taste nice. So one of the things I did was I decided I really love cheese and I love tuna melts. But I thought, actually, I'll buy some healthy multi-seed breads and tuna, make a tuna melt. Took a bite of it, and you were saying enjoy the food and taste it in your mouth and enjoy when you're tasting it.
Yeah, and to recognize where you're tasting it.
I actually don't like this. Yeah. And I was just like, I actually don't like this being in my mouth. It's horrible. So I just threw it away and got myself something else from the fridge, which ended up being a lot healthier. Because what I'm doing is, I think when I was binging, I would eat and I wouldn't taste the food, and I probably.
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, like when I was binging, I would probably not taste the food. I would eat really quickly, so I definitely wasn't tasting it. But what I realised is I was probably eating a lot of food I didn't actually like. I wasn't actually enjoying. So
well, that's true because, just really quick, don't you agree? The reason why you were eating those foods is because they were bad.
Yeah.
And you weren't going to be able to eat them again. And the other thing too is because those foods are bad, when you would have them, you would feel like you failed.
Yeah.
So there is this, the only reason why you're actually eating these foods is because you failed and you're not going to get to eat them again when you attempt this again. So you should eat anything that is failure foods for that day. So it's not even something that's pleasurable because like you just said, you gave yourself the freedom to eat this food just the other day, right? And you realized that you didn't really like it. It didn't taste very good. Maybe it tasted good for the first bite, but after a few bites, it probably gave you a good switch. Like, ooh, this isn't so good, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely what happened. I consciously, because I was thinking about what I was eating, it gave me a chance for my body to say, I don't actually like this. This doesn't taste good. Do you actually really want this? You can eat anything, so you're going to carry on eating this. So I didn't eat it. I threw it away. So I think it's a bit of a revelation that every time I'm eating, I'm like, you can have anything. And as much as I would have thought I would have gone mad and eaten everything that's terrible and, and double the amount of food that I normally eat, I'm not finding it because I think, well, you don't need to finish it because you can have more. You can have whatever you want, whenever you want. So it's like probably the most liberating feeling that I've ever had. But having the trust to be able to totally keep reminding myself that is the bit that has been the most amazing thing, because I've never ever had this trust before to believe that I could be in control of choosing my own food.
Yeah, well, what does this tell you about the impulses you had to binge before? What does it tell you about the correlation between the deprivation of those foods and the impulse to eat them?
Oh, yeah, it was totally linked. It was, it's like the forbidden fruit. It was,
Yeah, and on top of that, the moralizing of it too. So even if someone were to say, hey, you're never ever going to get pickles again, you might go, yeah, whatever. That's fine. Right? But it's the moralizing of the food that I think is where the chemistry of it gets very, very alluring in the brain, because not only are you being deprived of this food, but if you eat it, you're bad. You're a bad person. Shame on you if you eat it. So there is this feeling of if I touch the forbidden fruit, it's ruining something important to me. So when you add to that the severity of the moral behind it, it's almost as if because the day has been ruined, that the whole day is free to eat forbidden fruit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? I don't know if I'm really explaining that very clearly. It's not just the fact that it's forbidden fruit, but that the forbidden fruit when eaten is defining for a period of time. Right?
Yeah. It's like, you can't stop now, so you're going to have to at least have a night's sleep to break the pattern.
Yeah, that's
to put it till tomorrow.
Yeah, the night's sleep is like, for some reason, it's like, okay, this is the end of that day and the beginning of a new day, so I get a fresh start, right? It's so weird because in reality, what you did the day before is affecting the day after. So it isn't, it's really a game that we've created, an illusion that we've created, right? Because if you really look at it, what was the forbidden fruit that you had the other day? Can you tell us what it was? You let me just make sure people know this client is in Dubai. So this is what's the type of food that you have there? And that's why there's a delay.
So it's normally carbohydrate heavy kind of food.
Pastry?
You know, fatty, cheesy, comfort food.
Okay.
No, not pastry, not really sweet. It's normally savoury, but comfort. Stodgy, heavy, carbohydrate-y.
And fatty. Got it. Okay.
Fatty, yeah.
Okay, so you give yourself this freedom and you take away the moral. And all of a sudden, how are you discriminating against these foods? Is it truly about, now what is it truly about? Wouldn't you agree? Now it is actually about pleasure.
Yeah.
Right? Because now that you have access to all this food and you can say, well, what would bring me the most pleasure right now? The trueness of the pleasure of the food, if that's my goal, because that's the other part of the what I've just encouraged you to do with this practice is you are not only to eat to hunger and to remove the moral from food and to give yourself complete access to all of food that's within your reach. You are to choose food that is matching the pleasure that the brain is asking from you, right? So up until this point or during this process, everything you've eaten is specifically guided, not by health, right? It's by what sounds good to you, what really sounds good to you.
Oh, I lost you there for a second.
So what I was saying is that you, up until this point, you have given yourself free access to anything that sounds good when you're hungry. And so everything you're eating is providing an incredible amount of pleasure.
Yeah.
Remove this whole concept of health, by the way. Like there is no such thing as healthy food. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I mean, food is fuel, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Well, we really don't understand health because health is relative to the body's needs. So how are we supposed to know the body's needs in any given moment?
Yeah.
Right? We're not the controllers of the body's needs. The body's in control of that. It knows its environment far more than we know the environment. So how are we to know it's a healthy food relative to the body's environment?
Yeah.
It's impossible. So there's no such thing as healthy food, at least from our comprehension. We can make assumptions that there's more nutrition in this food, but what if that food's nutrition isn't necessary, but our brain needs something different? Yeah. Right? Then a food that we believe is nutritious actually is not nutritious at all because the body doesn't need that nutrition and it needed something different. So let's remove this whole concept of health from the equation. You are to eat only what sounds pleasurable. So would you say that over the last 5 days that you have sufficiently are eating the most pleasurable foods that your mouth says it wants?
Yeah.
Okay. And let me get this straight. What you're saying is surprisingly, you're giving yourself access to these foods and you're not binging on it because the pleasure is so pleasurable that you can't stop.
No, not at all.
Doesn't that sound ridiculous when you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Because before, you were given foods that were bad and off limits, and they weren't even pleasurable, but you binged on them anyways because they were bad and off limits, right? Because you failed the day, so the whole day might as well be full of foods that are off limits, whether they're pleasurable or not, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you have free access, and do those foods even though they're more pleasurable, would you say the way you ate this week has been more pleasurable than you've experienced ever?
Oh, yeah, and I've eaten a bigger variety of foods than I've eaten in years.
More variety than years, correct? Okay. And
Yeah.
would you say that
Like
this...
I've been a real pattern eater. I would eat the same thing over and over again.
Well, that's what happens when you have anorexia, orthorexia, or that you diet, because you've eliminated so much option, right? You can't have dairy, grains, fruits. You can't have, right? You can't have certain types of meat. You can't have certain types of fats, right? You've eliminated huge amounts of options. Can you see why that would be, that you end up eating only very limited quantities and amounts?
Yeah.
And choices. So that's a product of the diet, right? So obviously, if we eliminate the boundaries and the rules and the religions around food, there's so much abundance and huge variety, right? Loads of, I know, you live in abundance. So it's a little crazy that, right? So now I want to ask the question again. Now that you have free access to food, and would you say that this is the most pleasing and most personally, most narcotic, enjoyable food consumption you've had ever?
Yeah, I mean, it has been the most enjoyable, but it's been the most relaxed and the most, sensible and, eating that I think I've ever done as well.
Well, would you say it's the easiest pleasurable eating you've ever done? Because you don't have to, you haven't had to reason, justify, rationalize. You haven't had to have a reason behind it.
No.
So it's easy, right? It's like, wow, this doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be full of drama.
I just feel like it's opened up loads more space as well in my life, like emotionally, because I'm just like, okay, you can have whatever you want. There's no limitation. I kind of, other things have been like coming to me, like just, I've been noticing things, I've been enjoying more things. I was walking down the road and suddenly thought, oh my God, it's such a lovely day. Whereas things, like actually moments of hitting me of pleasure that aren't stimulated by food and aren't stimulated by other things, so I kind of just feel much more relaxed in myself.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that honestly, is that something you would have ever thought that this is like an unintended consequence that you would not have thought would have come out of this?
Oh, completely.
Okay, all of you are hearing this. Are you hearing this how often are you hearing this with different people from all over the world? No, it is so real. So this is what I have observed. It's across the spectrum of eating disorders, right? Because you're more anorexic. I hear this with binge eaters as well, and bulimics, and the variety of types of bulimia, right? When you get rid of this pressure to lose weight. So let's think of how this might affect your brain. So what you did before is you believed that thin body was safe, secure, that it would provide you value, that there was so much gain emotionally and spiritually with the thin body, correct? So because you don't have that thin body, you feel void, scared, afraid, you're hiding, there's shame, there's guilt, and then there's shame because you feel like I am a bad person, right? I am a failure. I am devoid of security. I have to have that thin body to feel secure. Your fight or flight, that's the survival area of the brain, is attaching to feeling threatened because you don't have that thin body. So what happens with that is you have this underlying sense of anxiety. There is anxiety and pressure because you have to be thin to feel safe. Okay? Basically, that fight or flight area of the brain has been hijacked by the belief that you signed on the dotted line to. You believe that being thin is where safety is, where value is, where redemption is. And because you're not there, you have the opposite sensations. vulnerability, fear, fright, avoidance. There's all sorts of like real emotions involved with the fact that you're judging your body as not safe and secure. So there is an underlying vibration of anxiety and shit's about to hit the fan and I have to be perfect, right? There's a very, very intense defensiveness with that pressure. On top of that, what you're making yourself sensitive to, and what I've noticed in the years of observation and thousands of people I've monitored, is that when you have to lose weight, you're prone to think things are stressful more so than someone who doesn't have this sense of inadequacy. So little things used to stress you out, where what you should be noticing now is things aren't that stressful anymore. Like the stuff that would have been a big deal before to you just don't affect you the same way. And it's not, there's the only thing that's changed is we've removed the pressure to lose weight. It isn't in the picture anymore. So it's not a source of security anymore, right? We let that go. So the other thing on top of that is that when you have to lose weight, the access to getting that security is through the removal of food. So in order for you to be safe in a thin, lean, healthy body, you have to remove food. What do you think that does to that fight or flight area of the brain? It's more stress because, perceptions of famine, perceptions of deprivation make that area of the brain so intensely active. So I want you to think about this. You're going to combine the belief that being thin is the most important sense of security and safety. And then we're going to say, and to do it, we have to get rid of your food. What happens to your impulses to eat the foods that are threatening? And what happens to your brain chemistry? What happens to your brain chemistry? How do you feel? You're prone to depression. You're prone to
all over the place.
hyperactive stress response. So you're a little irrational about stress. Things feel more catastrophic to you that shouldn't be.
Yeah, totally.
Am I making this up, or is this like matching your own personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
Okay, so now.
It really is. And, and there'll be days that are worse than others, obviously, but yeah, they're totally the thoughts and kind of feelings and the kind of ups and downs that, the confusion that you kind of set in your own brain.
And you don't necessarily know where it's coming from, right?
Yeah.
You just know that I have to lose weight if this is going to go away. I believe that if I lose weight, all of these weird feelings of anxiety and like I'm walking on eggshells, they'll go away when I lose weight. Right?
Yeah.
No one ever questions that maybe that the attachment to being thin, being safe, combined with the removal of food, making you prone to senses, this fear, this belief in starvation, or not even starvation, because you don't believe you're starving. You believe that it's a worthy cause, right? Because I need to be safe being thin. That when you combine that with the removal of food and the vulnerability of I'm feeling deprived, physically and psychologically, that those two in combination are creating this brain chemistry that is feeding the drama, right? So you come to me and say, I'm in this drama. I'm in it. It's taking me down. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out. And I say, okay, this is what you're going to have to do. We're going to remove weight loss as the goal. Pretend like it's not even an option anymore. Let's try to get you to stop seeking weight loss, right? The risk being that you're fat forever. You did that. That's the first step we have to make. The next step is food is abundant. You have to give yourself free access to this food. You have to. If you don't, you're going to have this still sense of, right? If you don't fully remove this impulse to go to lose weight for safety, and you don't, if you don't allow access to food, nothing's going to change, right? So you give yourself access to food, no shame, no guilt. You can have anything you want when you're hungry. It is all there, no shame, no guilt, right? And we completely accept the fact that you're going to stay the same weight, maybe even gain, right? So we go into both risks. What happened to the anxiety, the stress? What happened to your sense of desperation? What happened to your depression?
It's just lifted overnight.
Overnight. So the video overnight, right? It's like almost immediate, right? Do you remember how you felt after the talk that we had?
Yeah, I did. I felt a little bit mistrustful, a bit kind of shaken. I felt like I'd been slapped around the face a few times.
But once it settles in and you say, okay, I'm committed to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you paid that chunk of money, right? Now it's real. Now you're going to do it. So why not? What's the risk?
It's exactly, well, it's almost like, you've tried everything else, you might as well give this a try. And, so just go with it. But I think I was expecting I might actually not be as, out of control and manic around food as I think I am. And I might not end up, eating 20 cheeseburgers on the first day. I did kind of think that might be the case. It was the rest of the stuff that I wasn't expecting. As I said, like the lifting of the depression and suddenly feeling more open-minded, being actually starting to be slightly more outward focused rather than inward focused, and actually noticing what's going on around me and kind of being stimulated by things that are going on around me. And then even things like looking in the mirror and looking at my body and going, wow, you've got a really nice body. Like, things like that. Like, it's just that these are the things that I wasn't expecting.
Me neither. When I did it, it was like, it blew me. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was like instantaneous, complete shift of consciousness, complete, utter shake of my spirit. It was the most amazing. I didn't know what happened, right? How can you explain this in any other way other than something happened?
I don't think there is another way to explain it.
Okay, the best explanation I can give you is what I just explained for the last 45 minutes, which is we literally lifted the brain from being in fear of death mode. You are living in a state of fight or flight and you didn't even know it. And the whole thing, the entire thing was founded on I need to be thin and I cannot eat food.
Yeah.
So all we did is say you don't have to be thin and you can have all the food. And what happened?
Just so much happier.
I know, and it's hard to go back. I mean, honestly, what would happen if I said to you, okay, it's over. You got to go back now. We got to lose some weight and you can't eat that food.
I don't know. It feels awful.
It does, doesn't it? You're like, oh my God, I don't know if I could ever go back there. That was misery. That was hell. That was insane. I was purely insane. Do you see that now?
Yeah.
Like you had mental illness. Do you see that now?
Yeah.
When you were in it, did you know that you were mentally ill?
At times I thought I was, but no, not really.
Yeah, but it was justified.
Yeah.
For a good cause. I need to be thin, right?
Well, actually, do you know what? The times where I thought I was mentally ill, I was questioning myself on why I was unable to lose weight. What was wrong with me that stopped me being able to reach my goal? That was my question to myself.
I know, right? Because losing weight is never the source of this discontent. No one looks at the belief system. No one. That is the last thing. That's the furthest thing from what you would ever have thought was the cause of this psychological problem.
Yeah. Oh, I thought, it must have been something in my childhood that meant I didn't have any willpower, which meant I couldn't stick to a diet, couldn't be thin. And, I was obviously damaged.
No, because the thinness, right, is what that's not it. There's no, you cannot question the thin model.
No.
I have people who have been following me for 3 years and they think I'm crazy. I'm like, you need to fully accept. You need to take the body and remove it from the equation of your happiness. That means you have to accept your fat. And they go, but what about my health? Don't I need to lose weight for my children? Right? Which is understandable when you're in it because you truly believe that your life's safety and security is in that. So to let that go, it feels threatening. Right? It feels like my life will be over if I don't continue to want and to achieve that goal. But here's the thing. if you continue to live that way, you will never have access to this experience that you had to give you an alternative or even a perspective to recognize that, whoa, this is not how it's supposed to be. Oh my gosh, like, would you have ever thought that there was this type of access psychologically to freedom and well-being by leaving the diet cult?
No, never.
No, you couldn't even comprehend that this existed, did you?
No.
You had to go a route that had you were vulnerable, right? You had to go to a direction that was completely blank. There was no clue what was going to happen. But hold on a second. For you to make this decision to go this direction, which was scary, dark, unpredictable, you had to accept the risk of gaining weight. Because that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
I know. You had to say, you know what, I have to accept that risk because I'm afraid if I have access to this food, I'm going to binge on it. I'm afraid that I'm going to get bigger. But I have to be willing to find out. Say that again?
I was convinced I'd be 2 stone heavier by our next conversation. I was expecting me just to completely binge and like pile on the pounds. And
well, that's because you don't understand why you're binging. You didn't understand that the only reason why I'm binging is because of the pressure to lose weight, this moral belief around food, then the moral reaction if I eat it. Like, you weren't quite aware of how that binging occurred. Now that you're out of it, do you understand binging better?
Yeah.
Now, does it, you know what, I want to ask your opinion. What do you think now that you're out of it? How do you feel about people who are fear-mongering food and saying if you eat it, it's addictive? That's why you're binging on it. How does that make you feel?
I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but hold on. A week ago, would you have said that? You would have read that food, it's so pleasurable, you can't stand it. You need to make sure you need to abstain from those foods. They're a narcotic. They make you eat it. What would you say to that? Now that you know the truth.
Oh, it's rubbish.
Don't you agree that it's actually causing more damage?
Yeah.
Can you see how that would be more dangerous to people with a binge eating disorder or bulimia or anorexia?
Totally. And it's going to drive you towards those types of food as well. Because, they're the worst types of food. Because that's, you're right. You were saying, when you're binging, you don't go and binge on what's perceived as healthy food. You binge on the worst possible food, the stuff that's doing the most damaging, because it's a weapon. You're actually damaging yourself. You kind of, it's all rubbish. I think if you just eat for taste and what your body wants, you're not going to eat things that your body doesn't want or that's bad for you.
Yeah, and if you do, right, let's just say, but remember, bad for you, what do you mean by that? That's kind of the opposite of healthy.
Well, I don't know, the perceived badness of food.
Thank you. Thank you. It's perceived badness because ultimately, at some point, do you ever think you might, where a donut actually sounds really good, where you might actually allow yourself to have a donut?
Yeah.
Of course. Right? But if it sounds really good to you, there might be something about that donut that at the time the body might need. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I think when people truly, and the other thing too is, I think when people say that food is addictive, that they don't necessarily understand either. It's kind of hard to understand when you're inside of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really confusing because you're not quite sure where the source begins, partly because no one ever questions the desire to lose weight. No one ever, ever, ever considers that might be the source of the cause of the impulses, right? The pressure to lose weight, this sense of, right, like threat if you're not thin. No one would ever, 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 ever question that.
Yeah.
Honestly, would you have ever thought, maybe I need to just let that go? And then see what happens to these impulses to eat.
Never, because I felt if letting it go was the start of the unravelling of me being actually this hugely obese person that wasn't going to be able to leave my house. I was so fat.
Yeah, I know. You're laughing because it felt so real, didn't it?
Yeah.
But for you to have this experience, you had to accept that risk.
Yeah.
That's like saying, oh, I have basically dedicated my life to running away from this feeling of death, thinking that losing weight or avoiding fat gain would save me from it. But I'm so miserable running from that feeling of death that I'd rather just sit there and die to see if there's a different way to live. Wouldn't you say that's kind of like, let's just put this in a couple sentences that describes it pretty much 100%?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had to go through. For people who are binge eaters, they have to sit through not eating, because to them, eating is what makes them feel safe from deprivation, safe from feeling punished, safe from feeling abandoned, right? So it's the same exact, it's like the same equation but flipped around. They have to go through the same feelings of, I'd rather die than to continue to run away from feeling that impending death. They get the same exact freedom, but both sides, the anorexia, the binge eating, and the bulimia all along the spectrum in the center, is all founded on the idea that being thin is where safety is. So it's very similar belief. It's the same belief system with opposite reactions, but with the same, I gotta be thin to live, I'm fat and I have to remove it to move on with my life, because otherwise I'm living with a threat of death, right? Anyways, how does it feel to not have that threat?
I've always thought I'm somebody that can't relax. And, you know, I've been desperately trying to meditate and trying to relax and trying to chill out. And the last couple of days, I've felt just more relaxed than I have in ages. I feel like I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm on a level platform. You know, I literally feel like a level of insanity has been removed from my life. Can you
how long have you felt that insanity? I describe it as this underlying sense of anxiety. Like it's real anxiety. Something has to be done. Something has to be done. Something has to be done. Right? No wonder you're going to have to try to meditate. Right?
Yeah.
You can't just be. So when people say the power of now, you're like, I'm trying. And then Eckhart Tolle says there's no try. It just is. And you're like, what the hell? Now you get it. It's like, oh. But however, for you to identify the anxiety, it required that we remove the source. Who would have thought it was trying to lose weight? Who would have thought that thin body was the source of your anxiety? That what you worshipped as the main source of like where that exists, right, is the source of the anxiety. So tell me how long you had this. How old are you now?
36. I'm going to be 37 next summer.
And so you're roughly 37, and you have been running away from this anxiety, pain, stress for how long?
Really full on, probably since I was 16, 17, so 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When was the last time you felt this way? Was it when you were a child?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, where there was just like it's open-ended?
Oh, yeah. I mean, actually, if I go back to where food, I didn't have to think about what I was eating, whether it was good or bad, I was probably 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, adolescent.
Yeah.
When body image becomes important, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, when the first time somebody says, oh, you know, you could lose a bit of weight.
Or, oh my God, you are beautiful. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because now you have to manipulate it and keep it, right? There's this manipulation to attain it, and then there's the manipulation to keep it.
Yeah.
That's where the things start to separate. There's the binge eating side and the anorexic side. And then the bulimia in the middle, right? You know, part of the reason why I think the eating disorder business, because it is a business, is so not necessarily accurate is because there's not a whole lot of people that get out of it because they never question the thin body image. And not only that, but how many therapists and medical practitioners actually believe that system, that being thin is making you more valuable. How many of them actually believe that?
Oh, probably most of them.
I know. So how can they be helping someone out of it if they don't know that that's the source of the fight or flight hijacking?
Yeah.
They can't really help someone out. They just tell them, you know what, you have a disease and you're stuck with this forever, because they don't know that that's the exit route.
Yeah.
It takes someone who has been in it to the depths of the deepest parts of it and then actually left to go, wow, I never would have thought that was my route. Who would have thought? My route was a gun to my head because there was no alternative. And when someone said to me, hey, Robin, you're going to have this forever. It's a disease. It's in your genetics. That was a death sentence for me. That was actually what said, you know what? I can't live my life this way. And this is what my life's going to be like. It's over. I'm out.
Yeah.
You know, no one really fully grasps the detriment of telling someone that they're diseased and it's their genetics. It is just, wow. That you think, what they think is that, oh, I'm helping this person so they can forgive themselves. Oh, no, you're not. What you're doing is you're saying you're stuck this way forever.
Yeah.
The intentions are great, but really the outcome is pretty bad. So there is this need for people like myself who've had the worst case scenario, who have real trauma. It's not just I'm dieting and shit hit the fan. No, it's real trauma, real psychological illness, who have used this thin model of freedom and escape and safety, and to be able to get out, to go, whoa, losing weight is not the way out. That's how you got there. Dieting is not the way out. Getting rid of those foods is not helping you. You're doomed. You're going to stay in it forever if you go those routes. And that's what the route they're teaching you. You're paying people to get out of this, and that's what they're teaching you. And you wonder why you can't get out.
Yep.
So now you've had this experience. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Because it's so easy.
It is. And I think one of the key things that I've realised is that it's the labelling of foods to be either good or bad, or restricting food types. It's like, if you just eat what you want to eat, you will naturally eat what you want to eat.
Yeah, it's like it's internally guided. It's an intrinsic guide. It's like what's pleasurable to me intrinsically, so I'm rewarded when I eat it. So if you eat something that causes like physical distress, how would that be different?
Yeah.
Well, now it's not bad food. It just doesn't work for you. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you're just like, that doesn't reward me. I'm not going to eat it. I don't like the way I feel. So even if it tastes good, I don't want to have stomach cramping and diarrhea.
Yeah.
So that's not moral, is it?
No.
But when you say that's morally, that food is bad, that becomes moral. That's when it becomes internalized as either guilty, I feel bad, I ate that, I shouldn't have eaten it, or shame, which is I ate that, I suck, I have failed. Right?
Yeah.
So when you take away the moral and you say, hey, you have access to all food, now you can be guided intrinsically. What's working for your brain and mouth? You know, you have access to this abundance, which takes away the need to eat it now. And the other thing is it gives you the freedom to say, oh, you know what? I ate some of that food. I maybe need to eat less next time because I got sick. I'll eat less next time, right? It's not, I can't have it ever again, right? That's easy. That's like, not a big deal, right?
It's just like regaining, I think, a sense of complete balance of perspective, balance of, you know, emotions, balance of, you know, being able to actually have choice rather than restrictions. It's like, it's kind of like an internal balance has been reset from my brain right the way down through my whole body, which is beginning to feel more balanced in the rest of my life surrounding me because of that.
It should feel like your spirit has been liberated.
Yeah.
that the body is functioning on its own, right? Can you get a sense of that? That this flesh that you're in is very separate. It's on its own.
Yeah.
And now your body, now because of that, this spirit, the Alma, has this sensory system now that can, you should feel light. I felt like I was levitating. There was this weird sense of levitation, and my view of other people completely shifted. It was not, before I would have been like, they're judging me and I'm judging them. And where am I in relation to them? They're better than me. I'm worse than them. They must know more than me. I know more than them, right? There's always this like separation between me and other people, like this.
Yeah.
What happened for me is, without trying, there was no like try or effort or lesson learned. It was just immediate. All of a sudden, I felt one with people. I could feel the trees. It was almost like, oh my God, this essence of the trees. I feel they're alive. And I could feel people's liveness. So I would look at someone and I would just feel the insane amount of potentiality of that human. And I would just like, oh, I wish they could feel this about themselves. Oh my God, it's amazing. Where before I would have said, oh my God, look at all the piercings, their hair, they're freaking goth. They suck, right?
Yeah.
Same piercing, same goth expression, and I can see straight through it.
Yeah.
Okay. I felt that way for almost 2 straight years. It was crazy. But, there is still, like when I talk to you, am I talking to your body? Am I talking to the spirit?
I think both.
No, I'm talking to the spirit.
Yeah.
Your body is hearing it, transferring it, and the spirit is getting the sensation of it. But I'm actually talking to the spirit. Because really, your body, I cannot talk to it. It has its own function. It doesn't understand what I'm saying. Yeah. The body only has an organic way of communicating. And the way I'm communicating is through feelings, right? It's through every word I'm using, and the integrity behind how I'm communicating with you, wouldn't you agree, is to try to allow you to feel a certain level of communication.
Yes.
Okay. That is not, the body is just like, here's the temperature, here's the pressure gradients, this is what's going on with humidity. Okay, how is her stress response? Is everything safe? Are we fueling? I mean, it's got way more. I'm not talking to that. What is happening is you are becoming conscious. The spirit is becoming conscious. Before, the spirit couldn't be conscious because the spirit believed the body had to be spiritual first, right? It's like the illusion of the body has to be capable of communicating first, and the only way to do that is through being thin. So it's attaching this weird, your spirit is attaching something to the body that the body cannot do. You release the body from being that, and now the spirit is set free to do what it needs to do. I don't even know if this is making any freaking sense.
Yeah, it is.
You have got to be able to continue to live completely separate from the flesh that you're in. It provides you and I on this planet, in this realm, a way to communicate. That's all it is. You should feel set free from the physical. Like nothing can really hold you down at this point. If your legs get cut off for some reason, does that change anything?
No, not really.
Nope. You just have to find another way to walk, experience the earth, but it doesn't take away from this consciousness, does it?
No.
So if you were to gain 20 pounds of fat, if the body gained 20 pounds of fat, does that change your consciousness? Does it change your access?
No.
No. No, so you know that for sure, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't teach this to you. You have the experience of it. You can feel that there's a freedom in it.
Yeah.
right? So when you say, I'd rather be 400 pounds to have this freedom than to be 110 pounds and to be stuck in that tiny box of insanity. Do you get that now?
Yeah.
That's how I felt. That's the decision I made. I said, I accept 400 or 500 pounds. I would rather be that and have access to this. And I will accept judgment. I will accept people, discriminating me. I'm okay with that. I would rather that than to be insane and dead with a gunshot wound to my head with the perfect body, right? To me, when someone says you are going to have a relapse, you're going to go back. Do you know what that requires, right? If you are diseased and you are now, I have an eating disorder, right? I have an addiction. If that is the case, don't you agree? Wouldn't that require you want to lose weight again for security and safety?
Yeah.
Agreed. You would have to take that soul that just unfolded and squish it back into a tiny little box. Is that possible?
No, not really.
You'd have to have brain damage. You'd have to have something that causes brain damage, like, something that completely takes the capacity of your brain and squishes it back into third grade.
Yeah.
Right? Don't you agree? It's like, have you ever watched any of the videos where I talk about the paper unfolding? It's unfolding. You become aware that there's something underneath the fold. It's kind of hard to refold it back up and say, I don't want to have that.
Yeah.
Especially when you unfold that it becomes something that is so spiritually awakening. Yeah.
Definitely. Because, I'm at a point where I'm beginning to wonder who I am because, everything is unfolding. And if I just shove that back in the box and kind of say, right, okay, that's it, I'm going to be cutting all that exploration of myself off.
Yeah, and you're asking to suffer again. It's like you'd rather be suffering. And the question is, who are you now? Because before you identified with the body. So if you are not this body, who are you? What is this? What has been there this whole time? For me, I remember thinking, I have always had this pure integrity. It's always been there, but I put it away because I wanted people to like me. So I started to gravitate to being something I wasn't. It was almost like I just took on an acting role. And I thought I was that role. But when I remove the role, remove the body image, remove the religion, remove the politics, remove the family, right, from being in a dictation, right, and I make the choice based on this pure light spirit of my soul, now I'm real. Now I exist. I exist. The spirit, this alma, this energy exists, and it's actually connected.
Yeah.
Right? And now I have compassion because you have the same spirit, the same light, the same essence. You and I are connected. I can understand. That's where compassion comes from. It's recognizing the connection between this energy of the spirits. We're very connected.
Yeah.
I'm connected with my friggin' dog. I'm connected to these trees. There is this life source and this energy source that we're all connected to.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's like a massive awakening.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
And I can't say, this is what you're gonna get, let's go get it. That is not how it works, is it?
No.
That would not, it wouldn't occur otherwise. You'd have to have a plan. You'd have to have a goal. You'd have to have all of this objectives. You'd have to say, when do I get there? When do I get there? Right? It's coming from a state of lacking, like it doesn't exist, and it has to get created. Right? But when you just let it go and you open yourself up without conditions, it exists, and you're like, oh, huh, I feel different. Wow, the moon is beautiful. I never recognized those trees are breathing. Never thought, I didn't recognize that before. They've been breathing. I just didn't know it. So it doesn't happen. It already exists. And the part of the problem is that what we've been conditioned since birth from, not because there's malicious parenting. Our parents only can teach us what they're aware of, right? So their awareness was stuck at, you have to earn it. You have to prove it. You don't have this light yet. You don't exist yet until you have the degree, until you have the car, until you're the right religion, until you die and Jesus takes you through the pearly gates. That's when it happens. But during this time here, you have to work for it, right?
Yeah.
So you never understand that it's here. We exist in it. It takes grace. It takes freedom. It takes like the removal of a guide. You have to just exist in it and let it be organic to have access to it. Once you have access to this energy, is there any limitation to it?
No.
No, there isn't until you believe there is, and you believe it comes from this object, right? From this object. This is what gives it to me. This object. This remove, then it becomes limited. Right? And what you believed is that my thin body gives it to me. So now all of a sudden the access to this goes like this. Right? It's just tiny. Yeah. It's a tiny little speck, and your whole existence is on that tiny little speck. And that little speck is what you've placed your survival onto.
Yeah.
The box. That there's only one way to get it. That one way is like limiting your progress. And then you wonder why you're depressed, and you wonder why life is so hard, and why you're so stressed out, and why everything has to be so perfect. Why there's so much pressure behind being perfect. I mean, think about that. Now, doesn't it make sense? You weren't a perfectionist. Do you see that word, that description really is a consequence of trying to fit a spirit into a box? You have to be perfect. There is a perfection there's a lot of pressure in that for it to work, for you to survive, it has to be so grand to compensate for the box, right?
Yeah.
What is that? What that sets you up for is a perpetual sense of failure and inadequacy, which puts more pressure on perfectionism.
Yeah.
Once you allow yourself to just be, in order to do that, you have to dismantle what you thought was true, real, and what your dedication to life was. You have to say, if that doesn't exist, do I exist? Right? That's like saying, if I'm 500 pounds, do I still exist? What you tell me. That's what you accepted to go through this. You said, I am okay. I have to give myself, I have to allow this. I want to find out. So you were open-minded about it, right?
Yeah.
You accepted immediate facting, didn't you? Which was the anti of your security and your belief.
Yeah.
This is very similar to me leaving a religion and saying, who am I without this religion? Do I even exist without this religion? Does God love me still? Is there God in this existence without that? Because if I leave that religion, I'm abandoned from God.
Yeah.
I have to believe that God exists with or without a religion. Whatever that is, right? Whatever God is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because once you leave a religion, now the interpretation of what God is now like different.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I'm totally going into a different direction. But do you understand now? This is our first session after a consult. Tell me how it's working for you.
Tell me how it's working for me. I think it's given me time to reflect on stuff and sort of really think about how I've got to where I've got to, because it's all very well to kind of go, okay, fine, you can see that it was ridiculous and you can see the great benefits of removing the want to be thin and the need to diet and freeing everything up. But I think, trying to actually figure out, it's like when you're saying things, I can remember certain decisions being made at points in my life, like the decision to, you must be thin, the decision that, these foods are bad, the decision that actually this is the best way to do, and it's kind of, and there are all these rules constantly being put put on, and it's like you get to the point where there's so many rules that you don't even know which ones to follow. All you know is everything's bad.
Yes, and you're scared.
Yeah. You know, I'd start one diet and 2 days later I'd start another diet, and then another day later I'd read something else and there's a better diet, and it's like, you know, literally you get to the point where you're like, I don't know how to starve myself anymore in many different ways. So I think in terms of, you know, just kind of the conversations being quite abstract have given me a chance to reflect almost for a bit.
Good. Really, this is probably the most abstract conversation we'll have. I'm pretty much normal. I'm actually normal. Because you want to know something, we're here right now to live, and my God, let's have fun. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
Let's live in culture. I like to see it as, okay, we're here spiritually. Let's be spiritual anthropologists. Let's get into culture. Let's do our hair. Let's put on some makeup. Let's be sexual beings. Let's be creative beings. Let's just have fun, right?
Yeah.
Don't take this too serious, but you know what? Make sure your integrity is intact with that consciousness.
Yeah.
Stay true to your consciousness. Don't become pretentious. Don't attach again. Don't attach again. Because that's when things go, now you have to focus on it. Now you have to be it. Now you have to perform. Give yourself complete access.
Yeah.
You know, and still live in the culture.
Yeah.
You know, still be part of life and part of the culture we live in that is still insane. That is still stuck in belief systems that have been around for centuries, and they are destructive. They're still in it and they don't see the destruction. We can live in that and have compassion for it. Because you know what? You were in destruction just a freaking 5 days ago.
Yeah.
You know, you lived in that and it felt safe to you. So we can have compassion for people who honestly think destruction is safe.
Yeah.
Right? Isolation is safe. Obsession is safe. We can look at that and go, I know, I totally understand that. And man, I understand what it takes to get out. And in a lifetime, how many people do have the opportunity or are willing to take the opportunity to do what you just did? Not many, right? Because it requires that you lay down your swords. It requires that you have the white flag. How many people are willing to, surrender their ego and say, that was a lie. It was fake. That's not even real. I'm not better than you. I'm not holier than anything.
Yeah.
I am just as equal as the freaking trees.
Yeah.
How much freedom is in that? All right. So let's schedule for next week.
Okay.